At this time, the public are welcome to address the county board in any matter of county concern. When invited to speak, please speak into the microphone for clarity, sign in, and state your name, address, and topic you are addressing. Members of the public may speak respectfully for up to 5 minutes. The public comment period is limited to a total of 30 minutes unless the board chair decides to extend it. This time, the public are welcome to address the county board in any matter of county concern. Wow.
He didn't show me that.
You didn't just shut us off, did you?
Well, that was for emphasis on the first paragraph. We'll go to the second paragraph. County board members may ask or answer questions of the speaker, but issues shall not be debated during the public comment period. At the board's discretion, the board may agree to schedule matters addressed during the public comment period on the current board agenda or on a future board agenda. All discussions must be respectful in nature and must be directed at the board, not at other members of the public. So would anyone like to come forward? Please raise your hand. We'll start with Pam. Welcome, Pam.
Thanks. Good to be here. I'm Pam Doris. I'm here to speak on the issue of the new chairs. I was here when artists came up and tried out some of the chairs that you're sitting in, and they do indeed appear to be broken. And I've had office chairs like that where you felt like you were sort of sliding downhill every time you sat in them, and they're uncomfortable. But the chairs that are out here in the gallery, I've been warming for the past 2 years, and there's nothing wrong with them. Okay, and they represent a $4,200 expenditure that I don't feel is necessary at this time. In the fall, you know, the taxpayers showed up and they begged you for some tax relief, but it was like, oh no, we can't do that. We don't know what's going on with the PILT, and we don't know where the money is, and this, that, and the other thing. So to spend money on new chairs when it's not necessary is, I think, frivolous. And you said one lady, Heidi, you said one lady or somebody cut themselves on a chair. One person, one chair. If you can find that chair, get rid of it. But the rest of them are just fine, and that's like an unnecessary expense, which we all know this is Goodhue County. You're going to need, Goodhue County, Cook County, you're going to need this money at some point during the course of the year. Something's going to hit the fan, and you're going to want a little extra money, and this $4,200 represents that pool. So I urge you to, by all means, replace your own chairs if you're finding yourself on a slide ending up on the floor. But I mean, the rest of these are just fine. Pocket the money. I think really what we as taxpayers would like is every time an expenditure comes up, that you think of it. Imagine that we were asking you to pay for it out of your own money, out of your own pocket. Would it be necessary? You know, in the case of these chairs, it's not. They're fine. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Arvis, come on up.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm going to follow up with what Pam said about the chairs, and just, if they aren't good enough for us, then why would you want to send them off to the community center? That's us in the same ballpark. We're just sitting in a different place in the same chair. I'm a person who does a lot of recycling and reusing, as you may know. And so I look at something and really seriously think about spending that money on replacing something that doesn't need to be replaced. If you need to add to it, then find something that's complementary and bring a few more new chairs in, but please don't replace all. One of the things that I find really hard to do is to chat with you, because the things that are coming up in the agenda are things I'd like to comment about. But to comment now before they actually come and are presented to you seems kind of like a backwards way to do it. For instance, I'll take the electric vehicle kind of assessment thing. I haven't heard the man. I don't know what he's going to say. There's some questions about who this company is, about you already have a fleet agreement for cars for some replacement with somebody, I can't remember who they are now. Who is going to benefit by this doubling that this company is telling you? I mean, they're just things that, to me, don't make any sense right now, but I haven't heard him. So if I ask the question now that I'm asking before I've even heard the presentation, seems backwards to me. To hear him first and then to be able to ask a question after you've heard him seems more logical, because he may address that question in his presentation. But it's not here, and I can't speak once he does the presentation. So the public's hands are tied. They can't talk to you after that information is out there. So how do we fix that? Or can we fix that? Back in, let's see, February, there was a meeting of the whole. There were some things talked about in personnel. There was a couple new words used, and I admit I'm not up on everything that's coming out these days and what all these words are, but coming out of the HR department, something called onboarding and phishing. Do you know what onboarding and phishing is? And you maybe do now. But you know, when you get a set of notes and you go, and what is it? It means kind of crazy to go, I'm not even going to try to guess. I hope you know. You talk about space concerns. We have buildings that we don't have done yet. The Hoagland Garage is one. There's still a punch list out there of many things to be done. There's a courthouse that needs some remodeling, redoing. There's a law enforcement center. There's a highway department. And you're thinking about buying, leasing the Viking building for space to do what? We have problems with the janitor because we can't find enough people to work. We have problems finding contractors. Could we just not hold off on doing some of those things and get what we currently have in place, fixed, done, ready to roll, no problems, and then think about the next project? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Stan?
Kind of intentional.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stanley Tull. I live on Deer Yard Lake Road. You will have to excuse me, but I'm going to stick to my written script, not because of nerves. It's more of a filter issue. A few weeks back, I was asked by a commissioner why I don't do public comment. The answer to that is, for the most part, I believe as a group, you do a reasonable job with difficult situations. I've basically been sitting in that chair behind me, watching commissioner meetings in the same seat for 11 years. I understand your job in this community better than most. My comments have much less to do with the border-to-border route that now feels a lot like the Safe Harbor did years ago. My issue is how it was dealt with by the commissioners. What I personally witnessed over the last 2 years of the border-to-border route issue was frustrating, embarrassing, and upsetting. 2 years down the drain. Public hearings, commissioner meetings, soil and water meetings, specialty meetings called between commissioners, DNR, and forestry, all the map printing, the meeting documents, all the per diem. All this time and money spent on one issue is absolutely breathtaking. I could have respected any decision except for the one we received, which was no decision at all. Call the vote yea or nay, but letting this issue die on the vine is totally unacceptable in my opinion. I believe the county's procrastination, dysfunction, and feet dragging by some of you was intentional and part of the overall strategy from the very start. Good luck in the future dealing with the DNR and forestry on other new projects with the reputation this county is building. I do not apply this criticism easily. Absolutely no one won with this non-decision, and the overall cost to the county is too large to ignore. That concludes the thoughts for the day. Have a stress-free rest of the day.
Thank you, Stan. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll go on to the consent agenda items. Excuse me, Commissioner Dufert.
Just to note that that airport commission member is F.
It's on the revised agenda, on the consent agenda, so
Thank you.
we don't need it as 7B.
Would you repeat that, please?
There's a revised agenda. The paper agenda, it's not on there. That's why I added on. It's on the revised agenda, so you see it on there now as
Okay,
Screen on here.
I got you.
3G, or F, I'm sorry.
April.
Oh, under
Scroll
consent,
down
thank you.
On the agenda just a little.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. There it is.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support from anyone?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we'll go to agenda item number 4, City of Grand Marais, electric vehicle suitability assessment. Welcome Shane Steele, who works with the city as a sustainability coordinator. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm Shane, Sustainability for City of Grand Marais. I'm here to ask if the city is interested in partnering with us on an EV suitability study. So a little background, and you've got a one-pager on this, but I'll just talk a little background. I applied for a grant to do an EV suitability study on the city's fleet, and the grant organization is CERTS, the Clean Energy Resource Team. They're a division of University of Minnesota. And they awarded us the grant and then offered to double the amount of funding if we could get either Grand Portage or the county to participate as well. The city has a small-ish fleet, and they were wanting to maximize the impact. So we are here to ask if the city or the county would like to participate in that. A little bit about what the EV suitability study is. It's a way to look at how vehicles are used, collect data on how the vehicles are used, and then see if the vehicle's needs can be met with electric vehicles. And so we'll install these telematic devices into the candidate vehicles that we think could be electric vehicles in the future, and then just drive them as normal for 6 months. The devices will collect the miles driven and the fuel consumed and the distance between stops and the time between usage, and it will collect that data for 6 months as the vehicle is driven, and then after 6 months we'll send that data off to a third party, and they will analyze the data and tell us if the vehicle's needs can be met with an electric vehicle. The cost, so the grant covers the cost of labor, which in this case is the third-party analysis. The hardware and the data collection would have to be covered by the county. And so it's about $200 a vehicle for the 6 months of data collection.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from any, please? Yes, Dave. Commissioner Mills, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Shane.
Hi.
Thanks for coming and giving the spiel here. So as far as the data is concerned, is that ours once it's collected? And I mean, will the analysis tell us more besides yay or nay on electric vehicles? Like, could this data help us make decisions about our fleet in general as usage?
The data collection tool and the data are ours, and the third party is a company called SWCD Labs, and this is what they do. They do fleet assessment for companies, government, and so the answer to does this vehicle, let's just pick a vehicle where does this vehicle in the future, could this vehicle be an electric vehicle? It might be, yeah, and it can be, the exact same type of vehicle, only electric, or it could be, no, this is not a good candidate for an electric vehicle, or it could be that we could replace that vehicle with a hybrid of some kind, or you could do a lot with the data, and fleet optimization is one thing you can do with it.
Yeah, and that's a topic that I think we're looking at a little more broadly to look for efficiencies in the county, and I think that could be pretty valuable data for us to make further decisions. So if the hardware is ours, so we could actually put it into other vehicles in the future as well, right? Once we have this
and
data.
you can collect data for as long as you want on this stuff.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duker?
Did you reach out to Grand Portage?
I did. I'm still trying to hear back from them.
Okay, and how many vehicles?
We can do up to 20 total between all of the different entities. So we don't have firm numbers on how many the city's going to do, because we're trying to see the county and Grand Portage if they're
20
interested.
total between all entities, or 20 for each entity?
20 for all entities.
All entities. And then, so we own the equipment afterwards, as Commissioner Mills stated, but the data collection is part of this grant is no charge. So if we decide to use the equipment on future vehicles, do we have to pay then to get the data?
So you own the hardware. There is a cost per month to collect the data, and that, if you're looking at the quote, it's $16 a month to collect data. So we're, for this study, just collecting data for 6 months, but if you want to keep collecting data after that, you just pay $16 per vehicle, and you can keep collecting that data.
So this might be out of your realm, but if we collect this data and find that we can use vehicles that are partially electric or fully electric, because we've done this program, does that give us access to further grants or funding in order to buy those vehicles?
I don't know. SWCD is the third party, and they have a lot of access to, they mentioned things like doing an electric vehicle test drive. They could help us organize, like, bring up some electric vehicles, test them out, see if they are something that the county would be interested in. But I don't know about further grants to buy electric vehicles.
Yeah, when we invest money like this and do different things and do assessments, it's to lead up to get us further funding.
Yeah.
Leverage.
Mm-hmm. Leverage.
This is a good way to look at data for, is this a good choice?
Yep.
Are electric vehicles a good choice?
Yep.
And the report that was in your, the sample report, it can show you exactly if that vehicle would be a suitable replacement for an electric.
Okay. Thank you. It sounds like a wonderful program, and it sounds really interesting. I'm just going to let you know that I'm going to vote against it because it was not part of our budget, and I would like to see how it works with the city first.
Okay.
And then go from there.
Sure.
So thank you.
Commissioner DeShaw?
How many vehicles does the city have to put it on?
So the city's vehicles are mostly light-duty trucks that we're going to assess, and there's not a great electric light-duty truck available right now, but the way the market's going, it probably will be available soon. And SoundWatch has a model for what that vehicle could be. So we've got like maybe 9 or 10 vehicles that we could test. If the county wants to test 15, or if the county wants to test 3, that we'll just, that number's kind of floating right now.
Commissioner Story?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, first of all, I think we need to have some input from Brian. He's in charge of our vehicle fleet, for one thing. It says here that these are the 3 best candidates: Jeep Cherokee, Honda Pilot, and Toyota 4Runner. These are the best type of candidates for this testing?
No, that's just a sample of what the report looks like from SoundWatch. I just wanted you to
Okay.
see what the results would be. Those are just sample vehicles that they had
You
tested.
can use any vehicle.
You can put
Yeah.
these in any vehicle.
Or
yeah.
truck, yeah.
Yep, and or
Yeah.
a truck.
Yeah. Since this is for information, I think I would like to have more information at this point.
Okay. Any other comments, discussions, questions? Yes, Commissioner.
What kind of timeline are we talking as far as when we need to notify you or the city?
We would like, the reason we're doing a 6-month study is so that we can capture some summer and some winter driving. And so we're probably looking at starting this in July and running it through December, or starting in August and running it through January. That's the timeline.
So you don't need to know today.
We don't need to know today.
That's good.
Okay, so Commissioner Storley suggested that we revisit this, unless someone wants to make a comment.
Mr. Chair, I just would like to let the commissioners know which vehicles might be considered. I know that Shane spoke with Kristen about this, and she felt that her department didn't really have vehicles that fit this. Our sheriff's department, as one of our public commenters pointed out, is currently using a leasing arrangement, I think, with Enterprise. So that leaves our other cars that are used for people to travel to meetings and around the county. And within the courthouse group, there are 11 vehicles. Some of those vehicles are, 5 of those vehicles are used more as commuter vehicles, to run to Duluth for meetings, that sort of thing. They're more cars. Those would be, I would think, if we were going to do this, the type of vehicles we would be probably looking at. The remaining vehicles are more four-wheel drive SUV that are used by Soil and Water, Land Services, that end up going, or pickup trucks that end up going sometimes to much different places, more remote and sometimes more difficult roads. So that's just kind of an assessment of, quick assessment of what vehicles might be considered for this. And I just thought that was important information to give you as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mills?
Have there been further discussions about fleet services and for our fleet? Or where are we at there? I mean, I think it's just an idea at this point, and so I was seeing this as a pretty great opportunity to get more data to help address our fleet overall, let alone an opportunity for, electric vehicles.
Commissioner Mills, it's been only very lightly discussed.
Okay.
I mean, certainly we're looking at what the sheriff's department is doing closely to see how that goes for them. It's certainly a good option to do that. And, then I'm not really sure if this input would be also helpful for us in decisions we make, whether to go with a leasing option or replacing our fleet. I'm not really prepared to say
Sure.
how this might be used to do that.
Yep.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Starley?
And to Commissioner Dukert point, we need to work on our budget, and that starts probably in April. So I think this would certainly be considered. And then also looking at our courthouse fleet and everybody else, that would be something too, to get a report from the different departments too.
Commissioner Kerr?
Just for information for you and for Commissioner Mills, Brian's replacement schedule is based on maintenance costs and mileage on the vehicles. And then the mileage that we use goes into an account, and that's what we use to pay for future vehicles. And then Brian is very careful about when he purchases vehicles, purchasing it at a time. So for us to do this, although the right thing might be to have an electric vehicle, it may not be suitable to our budget or our uses. So there's a lot that goes into this and the decision-making besides the $200 per vehicle. So, but it is something that it sounds like everyone would like to hear more information on.
And just to address that, this is a tool in that decision-making process.
I get that.
And, okay, good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that tool still costs money.
Yes.
So the total cost could be 200 vehicles, and we would decide that maybe 5 or 6 or 11 or
200 per vehicle.
200, and how many would be ideal from your perspective? 6, 7?
I don't know about ideal, but I would think the minimum that we would probably want to look at if we were doing it would be the 5 commuter vehicles, because
Okay.
if they're electric vehicles, there's also needs to be access to electric charging stations. And if you're running around the back roads of Cook County, that might not be as practical at this point. So, that would be the maximum, I think, that we would look at this time. If, of course, the commissioners are interested.
Commissioner DeClercq?
Something we're not thinking about also if we went to completely electric vehicles is how much staff time we're going to be wasting waiting for the vehicle to charge back up. I'm sorry, it's really easy to pump gas.
Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion, or should we just let this?
Well, I'll move to table it until
Okay.
we get more information. I don't know.
Next agenda item, or next meeting, excuse me? Or would you want to put it out farther? When do you need to know, Shane?
Well, if we're going to start in July or August, we probably want to know before June. Let's say
Okay.
June 1st.
I'd like to table it until March 24th.
March 24th, okay. Do we have a second to that? Support of that?
I'll support that.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw, support. Any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Shane. We'll put that on the March 24th agenda. I see Kim Shepherd is here, so we're going to go right on, just in time. Thank you. We do need to administer an oath to Mike Keyport to be our official Emergency Management Director, and that's required by the state, so if you two would like to do that at this time.
I do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and that I take this obligation freely
and that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
I do further swear
I do further swear
that I do not advocate, nor am I a member
that I do not advocate nor am I a member
of any political party or organization
political party or organization
that advocates the overflow of the government of the United States
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence,
by force or violence,
and that during such time as I am a member
and that during such time as I am a member
of the Cook County Emergency Management Organization,
of the Cook County Emergency Management Organization,
I will not advocate nor become
I will not advocate nor become
a member of any political party or organization
of any political party or organization
that advocates the overflow of the government
that advocates the overthrow of the government
of the United States
of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence.
by force or violence.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Thank you both.
It's more intense than our oath.
Yeah, boy, that's quite a commitment. Well, thank you both, and especially Mike, thank you for joining us and committing to that oath.
It's the emergency management.
Okay, we'll go to Land Services. Tim? Equipment purchase for recycling center and matching funds request for Trails Project Grant.
Right, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and company. If it would be all right with the board, I would like to actually swap the items out and start with item B first with regards to the trails, because I have a couple individuals here to be able to answer questions and discuss that, if possible. Okay. So the trails, we're looking at requesting funds basically for the Trails Grant. Now, this is kind of coming full circle because this particular grant had been reviewed by this board and approved for submission and was approved by the DNR and the feds last year at times. And during that time, when we were applying for it, we basically, the thought was we have to have some form of match, and about $5,000 of that is going to be in-kind labor, and then $14,000 of that needed to be in cash form. And we did have a $3,000 commitment from Visit Cook County. And so then it remained $11,000 left that needed to be on hand for a cash match. The thought at that time was we were going to go ahead and discuss with the various user groups of the trails to go ahead and pony up and be able to cover that. As it turns out, it was a little difficult to try and find a good, proportionate kind of setting out. Some user groups have better resources than other user groups and such. And so basically we've discussed this on the Parks and Trails Commission, and the recommendation was that instead of trying to find that match in the user groups, that we would go ahead and use our Fund 85, which will have no impact on the budget. It is a fund that is already set aside, has ample funds in it to be able to cover that match. And part of this grant is actually, in helping not only the trails in terms of providing information markers and signage and things like that, but it also helps the county in general with more accurate mapping, and with our MIS folks, and our IS department has been involved in this as well. And so I do have Carla Miller of the Northwoods Volunteers and Jonathan Benson of the U.S. Federal Forest Service to be able to answer any questions if at all possible. But the request is specifically just to take the $11,000 of cash match out of the Fund 85.
Okay, any questions from any of the commissioners? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Dukirk makes a motion to approve.
Second?
Second by Mills. All those in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, excuse me, discussion. Thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just for the general public to understand that this is for all trails, hiking and biking and everything that we have listed here. Cross-country skiing, inline skating, snowmobiling, the whole works.
That's correct.
Yes.
Just to go back in time,
Yeah.
just for a minute, this stemmed from a collaborative trail effort of all the user groups. So we've got proposals for biking trails, skiing trails, hiking trails, ATV, snowmobile, the full gamut. And so it stemmed from that Trails Roundtable with all users in October of 2018. So that was the intent of this, so.
Any other
We
comments,
get many
questions?
compliments on our trails, no matter who I speak with, both local and visitors, that you have some of the top trails in the state, in the region. So
Well, thank you for that.
we're proud of all that, too.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Mills?
But it doesn't look like water trails are in this? They're already kind of marked in their own thing? is
They're
that
already
correct?
kind of marked,
Yeah.
yep. There aren't any water trails in this proposal, that's correct.
Thank you.
They will be included in some of the mapping efforts, though.
Oh, okay.
Okay, anything else? Someone like to come forward with a motion?
We got it. We got that in a second.
Okay. yeah. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
And thank you, John. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
yep. Commissioner Duca.
I just want to let you know that you all approved sign markers for off-road roads. That is very similar to what the B2B was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, turning back to my other item is basically a purchase request for the recycling center. Boy, in a testament to some good equipment, we've utilized this one forklift since the 1980s model in the recycling center operations, and it has come time where that is costing us more in terms of upkeep and maintenance than it is in terms of value. And so we basically did some research and came up with a replacement. And in fact, this company, Forklifts of Minnesota, has allowed us to go ahead and take a trial period. So we've had that specific forklift in the recycling center. We've been working it to make sure that it works, but it's a 2019 model. So I'm basically requesting authorization to go ahead and purchase this. Now, in terms of where the funding would come from, we do have what's designated as the future landfill or transfer station fund that's in the building fund that is pretty extensive. I think we're just below $500,000 on that. I've been utilizing that fund for the acquisition of equipment for the recycling center. It had been a suggestion probably about 4 years ago to start including funds into the budget to replenish that fund so it doesn't just deplete out. And so in this particular year in 2020, there was $20,000 that had been budgeted to go ahead and go back into that fund. And this is a cost of $22,350. So in balance, it's not really much of an impact on that fund. It is zero impact on the budget.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Comments? Yes, Commissioner Deschamps?
Not much of a warranty on that. 11 months.
Oh, well, it's I don't know what standard warranty is, but it's the same basic model, the same thing as we had from the 1980s, so we've become, fairly well comfortable with the brand and the type.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty decent price on it.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Tim, for coming forward for the ask here. I'd like to learn more about the future landfill development account in general someday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Mills, I tend to try to not talk about it because it ends up being a fund that I fear would be depleted without my assistance. So I've been kind of guarding that fund and using it very, very sparingly, which we closed our landfill and we closed our transfer station nearly 20 years ago. And so the fact that we have that money in there should be a little bit of a testament to the frugalness that we've utilized in not utilizing that fund, setting it aside, because, we had originally put that fund aside in the circumstance that we may not, in the future have the options. Right now, all of our waste goes through private waste collectors, and it goes through the Western Lake Superior Sanitary District. And if some functions or features change in the system, we wanted to have funds on hand to be able to, put together another landfill or transfer station if need be. And so that's why we've kind of kept that aside.
That's kind of where I was going with it
Okay.
too, is to, just based on how the recycling market has gone, I think it could behoove us to look at our options and see if there's a way to make us a little more resilient to market fluctuations or changes or whatever. So that's where I was going with that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from questions, comments? We could entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Nay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim.
And now we'll go to the auditor for select canvas board members and date and time.
Mr. Chair, the election is next Tuesday, and following that, we have to canvass that election on either Thursday or Friday. I would like to have it as soon as possible, so I would ask that you approve Thursday, the 5th at 10 a.m. for the canvass of that election. And then secondly, the members of that canvass board are the county auditor, the mayor of the largest city, the court administrator, and 2 members of the board of commissioners chosen by yourselves. But it only takes 3 as a quorum to run the event. The board, if you choose 1 or 2 of your members, and if you can't attend, then you can appoint someone to fill your spot. Or in the absence of you appointing anyone, I'll find someone to fill your spot. All under statute.
Okay. So we need to approve the March 5th and for 10:30, and also, are there any commissioners that would like to or are able to help with that? I'll be out of town myself.
Typically it takes, for a single candidate election, it should take less than an hour.
Well, I guess we don't have anyone
Oh, I will volunteer.
here.
I think you said 10, but 10:30 or 10?
Did I write it?
You said
10:30.
10:30?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
10:30.
Wait, I could be back in time, I guess. 10:30 on the 5th? I'll come in.
Right.
Okay. So Commissioner Mills and myself will come in for that, and then we need a motion, or is there any more discussion on that? Need a motion for that time and to appoint Commissioner Mills and myself to be involved in that canvass.
I will move to set the meeting at 10:30 and have myself and Chair Bersheim as members.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay?
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to our attorney for bylaws, drafting and review, and hopefully approval and discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So I've proposed that we work on sections 3 and 4 today. I didn't receive any comments from commissioners other than comments on section 5, which I did not intend to be on the agenda today, but submission for the board packet included the first part of section 5, that's rules of procedure. So, I mean, if we have time today and you've reviewed that, we can certainly look through it, but I hadn't prepared that as part of my presentation. Sections 3 and 4 are county board organization and county board meetings. A lot of these two sections are pretty standard, and of course, I invite you to comment on sections I haven't highlighted, but if you haven't let me know, then I've basically put in my slideshow just those highlighted sections. And so what I'd like to start with is vacancy. Actually, I did receive a comment on this, or I talked about it during our leadership meeting yesterday. Vacancies on the board created by somebody resigning prior to their, or leaving the board, their position for some reason prior to the end of their term, is addressed in statute under 375-101. What I'm suggesting in this slide is that we actually strike all of that language in which I attempted to interpret that section. It's extremely complicated and really comes down to the specific circumstances of the vacancy, when it occurred, how it occurred, that kind of thing. So what my suggestion is, and I think this is supported by at least a couple of commissioners, is that we just leave that first line. A vacancy in the office of the county board is filled pursuant to Minnesota Statute 375-101. What Auditor Powers pointed out, which is accurate, is that statute's changed too. So interpreting it in our bylaws could cause complication later. If the statute changes, then we'd have to go back and change that language. Is there a consensus about this?
I'm fine with removing it.
Yes,
Okay.
I think so.
So I'm hearing we're okay with striking that language?
Mhm.
Okay. Section E, or 3E, officers. This highlighted language is about how you elect officers at your organizational meeting. We've gone a little bit back and forth the last couple years on how to elect officers. The highlighted language is what I'd like to draw your attention to, and I'll just read it out loud. The chair first opens the floor for nominations. Nominations do not require a second. If only one candidate is nominated for an office, the chair declares the nominee elected. Once nominations are closed, candidates are voted on in the order in which they were nominated. Voting of officers is by ballot, signed by each voting commissioner and collected and tallied by the auditor treasurer. In the first vote where the candidate appears to get a majority of ayes, the chair declares the candidate elected to the office. Alternatively, the board could put, okay, that language is just my own notes, but alternatively, the board could put both or all nominees on the same slate for the election. In other words, instead of voting on one nominee at a time in the order they're nominated, you would have more than one on the ballot. That could cause complications in that if you have more than 2 nominees, you might not reach a majority on any nominee, and then what do you do?
Rank choice.
Rank choice tends to, we could do some research on that if you'd like. And then I also just want to mention another alternative that's not in my slide, which is we have before done a viva voce vote. I think that's how you pronounce it. That just means that you're voting by raising your hand or audibly voting. That is what we did historically, I think, until this year. So I would invite you to discuss and decide what you want the language to indicate.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any legal tricks we got to know as far as doing it audibly versus doing it on paper versus showing of hands or anything like that? When it comes to, for instance, ranked choice voting, I don't think you can do that audibly. Right.
That would be complicated.
Right.
You know, the only legal consideration I would ask you to bear in mind is that if you are voting by ballot, those ballots become public documents.
Yeah.
And become part of the packet, or not necessarily part of the packet, but somebody could request them. So if your intent is to keep your vote entirely
Right.
confidential, you're not going to necessarily do that by voting by ballot.
Well, and I guess that's what I was asking. It isn't,
Yeah.
I thought there was something saying that we must show our votes. Our vote, as a board, our votes must be known.
Are you talking from statute or from what I've told you at our last? Because
Well, I don't know.
think I had mentioned something like that when we had our organizational meeting this year, and that was because of this the nature that they're
Yeah.
going to be public
Yeah.
data. Once it's written down, it's in tangible form, it becomes government data.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Dukert?
If only one candidate is nominated for office, the chair declares the nominee elected. That does not allow for the opportunity of board members to oppose that nomination.
What I have researched indicates that you don't need a second for a nomination.
Right.
You don't need, I'm not sure that there's a reason to oppose a nomination. You just vote against that person if you oppose.
But how I read this, there's a nomination, only one person. The nomination closes, and then the chair says the nominee is elected.
Nominations would only be closed after, this language isn't in there. I can put it in there for clarification if you'd like, but the chair would only close nominations after calling to make sure that nobody else had nominated anyone.
Correct. And then after there's only one and it's closed, according to this language, does the chair then say that person is elected without a vote?
Yeah.
Which means if someone opposes that vote, it's not made record.
Somebody who opposes voting for the first nominated member would need to nominate somebody else.
We often have times when there is not a person willing to step up to that position.
This is the
I'm just stating for the record.
Right,
Because
so-
I was one who voted against a nomination and I wanted that record.
Okay, so if you have any alternative language that you'd like me to consider and do research on, I'm happy to do that.
It goes to vote no matter what, even if there's only one nominee, then you call the vote.
And what would happen if the person is voted against? You open nominations again?
You have a very lively discussion.
I mean, that's just what you would want to consider if that's the language you want. So if your nomination fails, if the sole nominated member, the vote fails, then what do you want the board to do? Reopen nominations?
You would need to, because you're stuck.
Any other comments or questions on that issue? Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I don't see, I mean, I can see where I can see where the vote might get repetitive or something, but I can see the value in being able to express concern with a vote.
With a nomination?
With a vote on a nomination. Like, I can see where Commissioner Dukert is coming from as far as wanting to express concerns about a nomination through a vote. Is that what you're saying?
Okay.
And I can also see where that could lead to a difficult situation where the vote doesn't go through. I think more likely what would happen is it would be one or maybe two nay votes, and it would still pass. So I see less concern with causing trouble that way. Basically, what I'm suggesting, in summary, is to have all nominations go to a vote. And personally, I would like to have them all on one slate, and for us to figure out a ranked choice way to do that.
No comment.
Good job, Dave.
So that's where I'm coming from.
I'm going to defer to Auditor Powers
Oh.
about the ranked choice and whether he wants to deal with that, since he would be tallying under this.
With five votes, I think it'd be pretty easy.
Okay. Well, if it's allowable,
Yeah.
it's just math. For one office, that would not be difficult, I don't think.
I love it. It's just math. You know, Brady, math's not easy for everybody.
Well, as chair, I guess I'm going to try to further clarify this. There's a suggestion that we have a vote on each nomination. Is that what you're hearing?
Yep.
The rest of you? So can we insert language, Attorney Hicken, on having a vote on the nomination? The first round?
Yes. Let me just make sure I understand. And then I think my response kind of depends on whether you're going to have a slate or whether you're still going to vote on nominees one at a time.
Excuse me, it's a good point. I think then you would strike out alternatively, the board would have one slate. You'd have to do it step by step, and it would change that process. So, thank you. Yeah, I would think that we just go nomination vote. And
So
Commissioner
may I-
Mills? Go ahead. Would you respond, and then Commissioner Mills?
So your intent, if I understand it, would be, let's say one person nominates a candidate for chair. Must there then be there would then be a second and a vote for the nominee? Commissioner Dukirk is shaking her head. Maybe that's not what she intended, but if that is what is intended, then my question would be, how do you distinguish that from just voting for the candidate, yes, aye or nay? In other words, voting to select them for the position, aye or nay.
Commissioner, did you want to respond first, Commissioner Mills?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I'll do
then
that.
Commissioner Dicker.
If we simply remove the line, if only one candidate is nominated for office, the chair declares the nominee elected, take that out. And we go to the next sentence. Once nominations are closed, candidates are voted on in the order in which they were nominated. So if there is only one candidate, you vote on that candidate. It seems really simple.
Can we
I see.
And that's
response to that, Attorney Hicken?
If that's the intention, that makes sense to me.
Yes, okay.
And
Commissioner
that
Mills.
was mostly what I was going to suggest, at least
I
just
know.
that's striking that sentence with the one candidate and the declaration of elected. I don't think there should be a second with nominations, which was mentioned. The thing I don't like is the lack of fairness. Whoever's nominated first gets a vote for. I mean, I don't see that as equal. And so that's where I like the slate, is that then everyone gets the same time opportunity vote. Nowhere else in our system is whatever idea is brought forward first is first dealt with. You know, that's just not fair.
So there would need to be another nomination
No.
to have a slate,
Yes.
Oh, or it could just be a single candidate on the slate.
on the slate.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Dicker?
And I agree with Commissioner Mills, because we've had commissioners in the past, knowing that the first nomination is the first one voted on, and people are easily confused. They select the person whom they know will be the first nominee in order to sway the vote to go in one direction.
Listening
there-
to this, can you put that in writing so that we can,
Yep. There's generally consensus that we should strike that sentence that starts, if only one candidate is nominated, and that I should insert language about a slate? Okay. Then I will draft that language and I'll put it in your board packet for the next meeting, so.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Excellent.
Okay, going forward.
So move on to compensation. I feel like I skipped a slide here. Maybe they're in the wrong order. They're in the wrong order. Okay, so take a look at this slide first. Regarding compensation, the only language that I changed from the original Scott County bylaws that former Administrator Cadwell had presented you with is I added, or I changed the sentence that says the salary must be established. Nope. Okay, I didn't put a slide in for this. I think everyone probably agrees the salary must be established prior to the end of the preceding year and is effective January 1 of the new year. That's what's been historically accurate, right? Okay, so now I'd like you to consider this optional language and whether you would like this added under F for compensation. If you want to refer to the per diem policy, you could do so in this section. The language from Nicollet County is the following. County board members shall also receive a per diem for attendance at assigned committee meetings. The per diem rate must be established prior to the end of the preceding year and is effective January 1 of the new year. A copy of the per diem eligible commissioner duties shall be established annually by the board at its organizational meeting and kept on file in the county administrator's office. Per diems shall not be paid for regular scheduled board meetings. So I would ask for Auditor Power's comment on this language, if this is consistent or if any part of it is inconsistent with our practice.
I was reading something else.
Okay.
The moment. Where are we?
Well, part
Per
F.
diem policy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
F compensation.
If you look at the screen, Brady.
Yeah.
So the question is whether we should insert the per diem policy or just reference it.
The question is whether we should reference it at all because it's not referenced in the draft you got last year, or last week. This is new.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you should reference it.
Right. Good. Commissioner Dukert?
This language is not consistent with our per diem language, so could we just reference it as in per diems will be paid based on the policy set at the January 1st meeting? Because of course, our per diem policy is very confusing.
Okay. Commissioner Mills?
I had the same thought, because also our per diem policy can change, and do we want to change our bylaws again, or should we just reference the per diem policy, and then, yeah.
I think the understanding is it would be referenced and not quoted in the bylaws.
And Mr. Chair, yeah, and another reason is because there's specifics in different laws that say you can be paid per diem for this, you cannot be paid for this particular meeting or that particular meeting, and so forth. So I think it's too complicated to put it all in here.
If I could just comment too, I think that that's something we have to take a look at some point in time as well, because there's a lot of gray areas there that I think we should try to address. So I guess as before the end of the year, I would hope that we'd spend a little time on that policy and try to wrestle with it a little bit
And
and
I was-
adopt that as well, maybe at the first board meeting or before.
I was working out a ranked
Oh.
vote for a chair example while that's what I was distracted.
Okay.
Pay attention, Brady.
Yes.
Might take you a day. Okay, so,
So if there is consensus that we should just refer to the per
Rest.
diem policy, I'll add a
Yep.
sentence similar that says, add this language. I'll add this language. Per diems shall be paid to county board members pursuant to the auditor's per diem policy. And I'll put that in your board packet. Just wanted to highlight that I had struck this language from the Scott County bylaws, and I believe this is consistent with the board's intent, at least for now until you have further discussions about compensation. Scott County, in order to maintain competitive and equitable compensation, sets the salary of county board members based on the current market data for commissioners in the metro area. My understanding is that's not the desire of this
No.
board.
We decided that at the very first meeting when we saw the draft.
Oh, okay. Well, I apologize that I didn't remember that, or maybe I wasn't here. But anyway, it is struck consistent with that. Okay, the next section I want you to take a look is 4B, organizational meeting. This would just define how you proceed in the organizational meeting. And it's been in the draft the whole time. I haven't gotten any comment from anyone that this is inconsistent with how you'd like to proceed in organizational meetings, but here would be your chance to tell me to put it in a different order, add or delete something.
So point of clarification that for, this would be the order of those considerations.
Yes,
Is
but
that
I can
understood?
take the order out and we can just do bullet points if you don't want to define the order. Looks like Auditor Powers.
Yeah, well, I'm just commenting on how it's laid out now. It's not broken this way.
Right.
In order to do it in that order, someone would have to go through and take that whole list and determine what's interagency, what's internal committee, what's,
Right.
you'd have to have those labels and go through them in those orders. Could be done, but.
It could be done this way?
Sure.
Or we could combine 4
Or-
and 5 to say appointments
Right.
to serve on interagency boards or just say boards and committees, appointments to boards and committees.
Would that help clarify some of the distinctions there that are amongst those? Because now they're listed in different forms. I'm asking that as a question, I guess. Commissioner Mills?
I don't see any reason to have them numbered. I think bulleting is,
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it is very important to do the oath of office and the election of officers first and second. I just don't.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
All right.
My question maybe for the auditor is, what we have currently listed in that publication that we take action on, if we approve this, then we would have them broken down by these categories. I want to make sure that that would be understood, and can we do that?
There's no reason you can't. I don't know that there's a reason for it. We don't distinguish per diems
Right.
or make any other distinction that I'm aware of. It'd just be information. And it would take some work to do it.
Right. So could we just have a general statement after we get to maybe number 3, that some generals of assignments per the structure that we have, and I don't know how you'd reference that, but I think we'd just create more confusion if we have this language and it doesn't fit how we have it posted.
Okay.
And,
So, you want me to would you like me to just combine 3 through 5?
yes.
And actually, look at number 6, to serve as liaisons.
That,
We don't do that either,
that's,
do we?
well, that depends upon, to my understanding, it depends upon the organization. In some organizations or nonprofits, we serve as liaisons by their bylaws. And in other situations, we do vote, at least for me. And so I think that gets more confusion if we list it here, because then we'd have to separate those out and do some research. So I think just a general statement.
Okay, so I'm going to work on language that combines 3 through 6. And then I would ask that you think of whether you want anything else included in this. I think there probably are other matters you address at the organizational meeting.
And possibly, too, if we do work on the per diems thing in the interim, that we could have more clarification. Commissioner Dukirk?
The organizational meeting, we also appoint citizens to committees.
Good point.
Is that,
It's part of accepting that entire packet.
wouldn't that be under appointments of board committee positions?
I read that as we're appointing ourselves.
You're talking about appointments of members of the
Citizens.
public to committees established by the board. Okay. I think we're just reading that differently, but I
Okay.
will make sure we include appointment of members of public and of board members to various committees, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I guess I was curious about the board committee versus internal committee.
Yeah.
You know, I see internal committees as personnel, public safety, highway, health and budget, yeah, but I don't know if that's, and then the board committees are the public,
Community.
appointing the public to the committees, or is that where you're going, or?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to say that I think it's good that you begin to think about this, because this is just touched on in organizational meeting, but we'll have, if you take a look at the entire draft bylaws, which I emailed to all of you this morning, you'll see that later on in bylaws, we talk about committees in section 8, special committees, standing committees, advisory committees, and I'd like to set aside time to talk about how you define your committees. I think Interim Administrator Rogers is also interested in that conversation. And so maybe we can better flesh that out in section 8. But in the meantime, I can just make this very general language.
Woo-hoo.
There we go.
Make it so.
Okay. Very good. Then we'll have a section 8 to consider at one time.
And is there anything else you want included under the description of what happens at the organizational meeting? I'll review the statute too and just make sure that
Okay.
it's consistent again.
The newly appointed chair must provide treats.
Yeah. Sorry, just making notes for myself. Cross-check. Okay. I wanted to highlight in section 4E that we talk about special and emergency meetings. There has been some confusion, I think, of late with how special meetings should be set, whether it should require board action or not. I'll tell you that under the statute, it does say sessions shall be called by a majority of the board. And the clerk shall give at least 10 days' notice to them, of them to each of the commissioners. So to be consistent with that statute, the plain language of it, you would need a board action. In other words, you'd need a quorum of commissioners. In other words, you would need it to happen in an open scheduled meeting, that you are setting a special meeting. I may not have this totally accurate, but I believe that there is a history of sometimes setting special meetings just by request of the chair and vice chair, or by an email, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure that that's how you wish to continue. Or please let me know if you want me to do further research on whether that's a practice that's allowed.
Commissioner Dukirk?
That has happened recently, but in the past, the way we were directed was that it needed to be during an open board meeting. So once the board meeting was adjourned, sometimes we have 2 or 3 weeks between a meeting. We had a commissioner that wanted to call a special meeting, and they were not able to do that because the vote needed to be during a public meeting. I don't know that I have an opinion on it one way or the other. It does put into question transparency. I mean, the whole reason why we have the video recording and everything else, and the questions that constantly come up at public comment, is that the public feels they're missing something, so.
Thank you. There was some discussion at one time where we needed to notify the public 3 days in advance. And
Yeah, that's
wasn't that
always the
according
rule.
to statute? And
That's always the rule with any special meeting, and a special
So,
meeting is defined as any meeting following
what
up.
would be appropriate to the statute? Is this a policy thing?
This
or
is not
this-
about notice, this is about whether you set a special meeting or not. The notice provision always applies. We always have to publish at least 3 days ahead of time any special meeting. But is there a special meeting held or not? That's your question, and who gets to decide that? Does that make sense?
What if you have a state of an emergency?
That's a different category called an emergency meeting. And that is very defined in statute as to when that happens.
And would that be part of this? Or could it be?
It should be in here, it's in the title. Let me,
Oh, I'm sorry. Emergency, it says special emergency meetings, okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, Attorney Hicken, if this should be, those two things should be separated out then? If emergency meetings have different rules or different criteria, that they shouldn't be in the same?
we can certainly make them in different categories, and they should be considered separate. This is just how the table of contents is laid out in the Scott County rules, so.
It seems to me that that would clarify these issues a little bit more for us.
Okay. I will separate it out. I'll make the emergency meetings section just extremely consistent with statute, or just refer to the statute. I think you still have some decisions to make about how you want special meetings to be called. And maybe today isn't the time to have that
Right.
discussion.
I think it'd be nice to have the information on the emergency
Okay.
criteria, and that way, that would lead us to,
I can
I think,
very easily pull that up and give it to you right
Thank you.
now if you'd like.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob, I think AMC has some really good guidance on special and emergency meetings, so I would just like more info going forward, and maybe we should let Scott County know too.
They've probably updated this since the 4 years ago that we started it.
So would you like me to bring information I collect from AMC, from statute, to another meeting on how you, and is there anything you want me to specifically research? Can we do it a specific way?
If I could just speak to that, I think if we define a special meeting by distinction from an emergency meeting, you know, by having the two, that will help us define how we're going to do the special meeting.
Okay.
And if you could somehow clarify that issue, that would be very helpful, at least to me. Anyone else? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask, specifically, how are we allowed to call a special meeting?
That is in 37507. Sessions shall be called by, oh, you mean, you want me to do some further research and see if there are other options, or if this is defined exactly how it's laid out? I'll do that.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah, I think the distinction between a special and an emergency. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
So we will address this section at a future meeting? Okay. Thank you. Work sessions first. I need to just double check that work sessions is one word, because I might have made that up. It might be two words. Anyway, that's a different issue. Substantive substantively, I'm looking for your comments on, I just need to confirm, I'm sorry that I don't remember whether there's been a final decision. Work sessions are recorded, is that right?
Be the third paragraph down on page 74 that you're referring to.
I'm not in the board packet, but the third paragraph down for work sessions?
Yes.
She's on the screen.
Oh, excuse, you're on the screen, okay. Excuse me.
The work sessions are recorded and streamed on the county's YouTube session? I don't know whether it should be that or channel. People are free to attend and take notes or watch the video stream from home. Is that the language by consensus you would like?
Sure.
Yes. Commissioner Duker, thank you.
This is part of why our bylaws are not done, because we have not formally decided this. We have talked about it ad nauseum. And I can't wait to talk about it again.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we dive into that conversation, I don't think we need to say and take notes.
Right.
That's people are free to attend or watch, or we don't need to say any of it. I mean, the public or maybe it's important to explicitly say that the public is free to attend a public meeting.
I think that was my own stream of thought, so.
Okay.
If you don't think it belongs in the bylaws, it doesn't have to be in there. I'm just trying to make sure people know they have.
Okay. Administrator Rogers?
Free to attend, I would say, or watch the video remotely from home. It's just,
Oh, yeah.
it's picky, but.
First, we have to determine if they're recorded.
Yeah.
So in regards to process, I just would like to throw this out because I mentioned it before. And I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I'll throw it out there. Could it be determined at the organizational meeting of the year by that board whether or not they will record these or not? I think, because I think there's differences of opinion on this, but that way there's some kind of accountability for each board going forward, whether they do this or not. And I did throw that out, I know in the discussion we had previously, that in our organizational meeting, we would address this issue.
I think that's up to the commissioners, whether you want to rip off the Band-Aid every single year.
Right.
Commissioner Dukirk?
The reason for not doing that is it has led to mistrust of the citizens and it.
Mistrust by the citizens.
By the citizens, and it's up to the board chair, and we just need to decide yes or no and stick to it so everyone knows exactly what we're doing. And I will repeat for the 175th million time that the reason why we did not have recordings for Committee of the Whole is there are no decisions made by the board at the Committee of the Whole. And the Committee of the Whole is for us to be able to discuss a topic freely amongst ourselves when we're not on camera in the public eye under pressure. And so there gives us the flexibility. And I have watched the Committee of the Whole, and I have watched commissioners sit in the Committee of the Whole with their mouths pierced closed tightly and then go out in the hall and have a discussion because they don't want to talk about it on camera. So I will 7 billion times say that I want that camera off during Committee of the Whole so we can have free discussion.
Well, let's go down that road. Commissioner Storley?
Well, I feel that it's part of our transparency that people can watch what we're talking about. They know we're not making any decisions, but they will have the pulse of where this is going to go. Most of the time, we have a work session, Committee of the Whole, it comes to the board. So there's a process. And I have witnessed many times we forget that the camera's on. So I would say that we need to have some type of video streaming at the meetings for, trying transparency and for the folks who aren't in the county but still feel a part of the county, and for those who are here every day.
Commissioner Dukirk?
How can it be transparent if people are uncomfortable speaking and they don't talk about the subject freely? They
I've not
talk
really
about it in
witnessed
the
that.
hallway.
I really haven't witnessed that, Commissioner Dukirk. There's been a couple later meetings that we've spoke up if we wanted to. That's the point. If you don't want to have an opinion or you don't want to talk about it, maybe we need to understand that, nobody's going to hold anything against us for having an opinion.
Really? I just got called unethical in the paper.
That's not the way I perceive it.
Yeah, okay. Any more comments on this? I guess we're going to try to address this at this time. At least, let's see how we can move it forward. Myself, again, I think it's a good thing maybe for the board to do in its organizational meeting, because then they're the ones accountable for it. But if you want to address this now, I'm open to that too as board chair. So let's discuss that. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we addressing the recording of other meetings? I think there should be a separate section addressing the recording of meetings versus addressing the recording of work sessions in the work session section.
If you,
And then we can kick the can.
very good, except in I, we do talk about, quote, broadcasting, which is language left over from another version, but I think the public is invited and encouraged to attend and participate in county board meetings. The regular meeting of the county board held in the Cook County Courthouse and live streamed and archived on the county is live streamed and archived on the county YouTube channel. So we talk about recording the regular board meetings there. And at the very least, I guess organizationally, we should move the language about recording work session down to I, but it is still on your agenda for discussion today. If you want, we can delay it until discussion about whether to adopt the entire final draft, or we can delay it till next meeting.
Commissioner Mills?
I very much like it to be moved into broadcasting. Beyond that, I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay.
I agree with Commissioner Mills.
I have one comment. So if we have it separate, this I think is pertinent as well and pertains. From my point of view, when we say, people can attend and observe the meetings, to me it's a little inconsistent to say, well, you can't observe it by video in this day and age of technology, and especially the rural area. And I think then, to me, it's an equity issue. So if we went down that road of if we're really going to tighten up and say then we should just have a closed meeting. Equity to me is very important. You've got handicap issues. You've got, you look at the laws in themselves. When you look at the Disabilities Act, equal access is very important. And I think you'd be violating this if someone made an issue of it. That you have it open to some people that can come and attend, and then you don't allow those other people access. What are your thoughts about that, Attorney Hicken?
If you, first of all, on the ADA compliance issue, I can do some other research, but if you want to just assume that equity demands that any open meeting should also be recorded, then that's what we could put in the bylaws if there was consensus. Any open meeting shall be recorded, bearing in mind that that will cause issues. Staff we'll have to arrange, if you are meeting somewhere other than this room, you'll need to make sure that you have the resources to record in that space. And, you know, maybe that's okay because that doesn't happen very frequently and you can just deal with it on a case-by-case
Right.
basis. Yep, but I think you have options here. And I can do further research on the ADA compliance issue. But I see what you're saying.
Not specifically, but I think equity is very important in government, equal access. And so if we're going to go one way or the other, let's really tighten it up, if that's our intention. And, you know, or let's make it equitable. I would tend to be more on the equitable side. Commissioner Dukert?
Does any open meeting include the town halls we're planning? Because all of us.
If there's a quorum there.
And there will be a quorum at that, so we will have to set up recording for all of those meetings, which will come up in I. Our planning and zoning meetings are not live streamed, and there are decisions made there that do not come before the county board that are very pertinent to citizens, and there are citizens who do not live here year-round, and decisions are made about their neighbors. What we do in the Planning and Zoning Commission is they are taped, so people who are not here, if you want to be equitable, are able to listen to those recordings.
So it's an audio recording.
It's an audio and not a visual.
Excuse me, do we post those somewhere? Or do you have to request those?
You can ask for them from, I mean, we could at some point post them somewhere, but I believe that would be a investment in technology because right now it's a microphone that hangs from that outlet there. But it is available and people do request them and people do listen to them.
Okay, so going back, thank you. I think we need some more work on this.
More
and
discussion.
maybe take have an attempt to bring something back with language that would talk about recordings separately. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm.
But that would be all encompassing then. Is that possible?
So you're asking to, well, what I heard before, and I think there's consensus on this, I certainly agree, to add any discussion of recording meetings should be moved down to I, broadcasting, and then take I and talk about it another time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what kind of do you want me to bring back specific alternative language? I can do that.
For I.
I mean, I already kind of did put some alternative language in here.
I guess for clarity, we're addressing county board meetings and work sessions. And the language that we would have on broadcasting would pertain to those issues and not the broader context of all meetings, because we've got other procedures in those as well. So we'd be just talking about work sessions, and the committee of the whole is part of that. And then we also have a discussion about closed work sessions as well, correct?
There is a section on closed
Right,
meetings.
closed meetings.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so we would have those three considerations. Is that, Commissioner Duper?
If we're going to leave in the line about people attending, instead of free, can we put that people are welcomed?
Hold on 1 second. That's a good, I like that, but,
We're not charging.
Well, I mean, just the way that comes out. We should wait until after we get new chairs, though, so they don't hurt themselves.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just a note about impact. If we were to say all meetings or whatever, then there is a financial impact to that.
Mhm.
This room is set up for us to be able to do video at basically very minimal amount of staff time or resources. So the cost, the investment's already made and there's not additional cost. If we were to, say, for instance, have a public forum or something at a town hall, we would have to have staff there, cameras there, and equipment that we don't currently have, or resources that we don't really have, we'd have to commit those somewhere. So just.
Okay, if, a question, when we define town halls, we could state that these are not recorded. And define those. Here, we're talking about committee of the whole and work sessions that would be held here. And that we could state in those, for obvious reasons, that if we're going to have town hall meetings, they're not going to be recorded. But they are a way of getting input from that group.
And, Mr. Chair and Attorney Hicken, this is, just as a point of clarification, these are bylaws for the board, right? For the Board of Commissioners, not for all of our other
Right.
meetings as well. So the scope then of the meetings would be board meetings and work sessions, I think.
Yes.
Right.
But I think town halls could be different, and we could define them
Okay.
as not being recorded. Because it's just.
Right.
Yeah, because if we left it as all open meetings, that means someone would have to follow us to St. Paul today and record us. Go for it.
Charge my battery.
Yeah.
Especially the singing part.
So language accepting town halls from a broad rule that we record.
Yes, I think that would.
I'll bring all of these as options to another meeting. Is that what you're asking?
Mhm. So we'd have 3 different sessions of. Okay, so do you want to proceed with this and try to get through it all today?
What's your timeline like?
No, I think we have time, but I think I'm trying to decide as chair whether we should have a little break.
Yep.
Then I would like to adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes.
Whoa.
Oh, excuse me.
A
No.
break, not
A
a
break.
break.
Just a break.
Recess, thank you.
Recess.
Not adjourn. I was going to say adjourn for a break.
Recess, as in
Could have had some
kids.
escapees.
Language.
Every time.
A big fan.
Recess to play.
Work hard.
I appreciate it. I like her.
Yes, thank you.
She's awesome. What a great asset.
Did she send you the thing for the?
I'm glad that we're discussing all of these things instead of just passing the bylaws.
No, she hasn't sent it.
No, it's good.
Yeah, I'd like to come up there for that.
Yeah.
Enough to
Sounds like
discuss.
21st from noon to 2 or
Not legal
something.
things to do.
Yeah. Cool.
But she was gonna get something. I didn't know if we were gonna meet again between now and then, or,
I'm not sure,
I don't know if I have time.
because right now the recruitment's going actually pretty well. We're almost up to 70%,
Okay.
which is amazing because we were 42% 2.5 weeks ago.
Right.
So,
It must be crazy, but these meetings seem to be going so much more fluidly, and there's so much more discussion and everything. I sit out there and just smile, this is what government should be. You know, I mean, it's just a wonderful feeling, just wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Oh,
So have you been staying out of trouble?
oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Busy.
Oh, yeah? I heard from, I think the Holtman meeting, you said you were thinking about running for a tribal council chair. If you're gonna recommend somebody else for your position, it would be making up. See if it's somebody who's fiscally responsible. I mean, really give that some thought and. So when would that election be?
The primaries on the 31st.
I wish you the best of luck.
Excited to vote.
Pardon?
So I'm excited to vote.
Yeah. No, I think you'd be good. Pardon? Well, have you been enjoying the weather? I've been crazy. I mean, I like this. 2 days ago, I was outside with the dogs. I could actually smell spring in the air. I was like, can this be? You know, I'm realistic though. I know we're going to get slapped once or twice before that happens. But God, it was like, made it through another one.
Yeah, this was actually pretty mild.
Yeah. I remember, last year it seemed like we had like a couple of weeks where it was really below zero. And it was,
I remember I was hauling wood trout. I'm thinking it was actually 46.
Yep.
I mean, it's,
And I would
to
say
me, equity is important.
well, everybody,
Balance.
you know, in my family and most of my long-term friends lives
Balance
elsewhere in
everything
the
against
country,
equity.
so I'm always snapping.
It's impossible to make
No,
everything
you can't.
100%
You can't.
fair.
But as far as
Oh my
access to
God.
information,
But even I myself, I think
Yeah.
20 to me is like very low, you know? And other people in other parts of the country are like, oh, goodness.
we can close a
You
meeting.
get used to it though.
I mean, we can have a meeting never close.
Yeah, you would, yeah.
Only
Only
for very
for-
specific,
But in a weird sort of
very specific
way.
reasons.
And there's no language at all. Interesting.
On what?
Crazy. But I have 2 words for you.
There is language regarding public hearings, but that's different. Yeah.
I
And
just, yeah,
your
I
board of
had it
commission
for the past couple of weeks and
meetings usually do
just got to
include
slather on fixed paper
public
rub and
hearing.
then go someplace and
So,
go next to you and cough your lungs
We
up.
record those just audio, and that's, okay, that's allowed.
Yeah, you're the second person I've heard though where it'll come back again.
I think we do the chairs in 2 parts, these chairs and the other chairs.
I was going to, if I could address that when I introduce the topic. I think we still need to replace the ones in the
I've cracked the
conference
window a
room over
little bit
there.
if you
So
get
it may
chilly
be
right
some
now.
hybrid
Okay.
of
It's usually kind of
of
warm.
this. Let me check with.
There's 23 over there right now.
Yeah, well, there's lots of dead chairs.
I know, it's a cemetery.
It's actually, I think of it as a shared hospice. How much more we got?
Not much. Let's see here. We do have to cover audience and citizen requests. And then that would be the one that takes up the most time after this.
Okay, we'll resume our meeting. Commissioner, excuse me, Attorney Hickman, would you like to continue?
Yes. I have a slide for just some additional optional language. This came from the Nicollet County bylaws. Just making it clear that regular meetings, special meetings, emergency meetings are specific categories, but that the county board can schedule other things too, retreats, forums, additional meetings at such times and concerning such subjects as may be established through board resolution or motion. It's kind of a general paragraph. You want something like this in there or not? It talks about where the schedule is maintained of those meetings. it makes it clear that everything is subject to notice requirements under open meeting law. That might be other places here too. I liked it for the joint meeting language, a joint meeting with the Cook County Board at any other political subdivision may be held within boundaries of either subdivision, because I know that's something periodically that the county board does.
Any comments or questions on that one? We pretty much agree with that?
Good to include.
Okay, so fine.
Take a look at this slide and the section 4H regarding audience and citizen requests. This is not the only place in the draft bylaws where we talk about meeting decorum or, for example, the public comment period is addressed in another place in the bylaws. But this kind of starts to address audience or citizen participation in meetings. The first sentence I left in there, it says the county board prefers all business matters initiated by citizens coming before them to first be reviewed by staff and scheduled for discussion. That indicates a preference. It doesn't say that's the only way to do it, right? So, wondering your comments on that. I did delete the language that was originally proposed in the Scott County bylaws that the person seeking to appear must or should notify county administration on the issue. That's just a guess as to what I believed the board's opinion on that would be. That's why I put this language in front of you to discuss. In other words, my guess was that the board would not make it a requirement or suggest that the citizen must first or should first go through a county administration.
I think we all agree with that. Is that correct? Okay. Commissioner Story?
Yes, I think that we need to remind the public at the beginning of the meeting that any kind of handouts they have would be great if we knew ahead of time what was in the handouts, but it's fine, but just so they know what the procedure is. Because when it says be reviewed by the staff, and, with the staff, they're coming before us. Otherwise, there's a lot of steps that could go into making it really different for the public. They submit it, a week before and on and on and on. I don't think it's that necessary, but that we welcome any kind of handout that they would have to further their opinion of something.
That will go to there and then to you, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, are we talking about public comments? Or are we talking about like when a group, like today, for instance, when the city came in front of us today, wanted to be on the agenda today to come and ask the board for something? Because I think those are really very different things. And, are we asking for citizens to have to get permission to come and talk about things before, or are we about specific proposals or information to be presented to the board? I think I just want to define that a little clearer.
I think you're talking about an agenda item on the board.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Right.
To distinguish that.
So citizens, okay.
Excuse me, Commissioner Mills, and then Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see the problem with the Scott County language that's struck out in the slide here. Aside from it should just say they should notify and of their intention. Because I think that is, for an agenda item, that is the appropriate process.
Yep.
Your suggestion, the language above the deleted language, or struck language, is okay too. But for some reason, the Scott County language seems a little bit better laid out, more direct for an agenda item.
Commissioner Story?
Thank you, Chair. So that means a individual seeking, so that could be a request from, like we had this morning, information about looking at our car situation, or it could be a presentation before the board at public comment. Is that what you're saying, Commissioner Mills? It covers all areas?
No.
Okay.
This is for agenda items only.
Okay.
Commissioner Dukert?
The H, this is only the first two paragraphs. The next paragraph addresses what Rena's talking about. For those members of the public wishing to address an item on the agenda, public comment. So I don't know if we should separate them and make it agenda request and public comment as two separate items instead of it all in one category.
Attorney Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Dukert, that's what I was just about to suggest, is that we make it clear that these first two paragraphs are for a citizen wishing to be on the agenda.
Right.
In other words, address business or.
And then after the
And then a
paragraph
second
about public goes back to being on the agenda. So it's kind of crammed in there.
You mean the,
There you go. What you have highlighted is on the agenda, not public comment.
except that sometimes people bring documentation for during
Right,
public comment.
which is why I'm saying it should be separated so that they understand what to bring for each.
So put this in a place that's clear that it applies to any documentation brought by somebody presenting to the board. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank
Administrator.
you, Mr. Chair. I would think that we would want anybody who's going to be on the agenda, if possible, to submit their information in advance, so that it can be part of the agenda packet.
Same as staff.
Right. Kind of as
Should you-
opposed to the person, who, comes and makes public comments and wants to leave a copy with the board. I don't see those as needing to be in advance, but if things are on the agenda, I would think we would want to see that information in the packet, if at all possible.
Excuse me, and I don't know if it was there or not, but would you want to then put a time, time for submittal?
Oh, maybe we
It
should.
has to be
We should
then-
maybe include the same time for submittal as we do for staff.
Right.
And it maybe this gets broader than just citizen requests. It's all agenda items
Yes.
need to be, submitted to the administrator's office by, noon Wednesday or,
The end of the Wednesday preceding the meeting.
right? Then we treat everyone the same.
Sure. I think that would be good.
So-
We all agree on that? To bring that forward again?
Yep, I'll bring it forward again as part of a
Okay.
more general item. And it will apply to everyone, including citizens. And then your comments were on the paragraphs preceding the one about documentation or letters for the board, that these be better defined as the first two paragraphs for agenda items and the third paragraph for public comment. Okay.
Commissioner Mills?
Before we get away from H, just based on our work session with MCIT, I am not comfortable asking for 7 total copies. I think we shouldn't put a number on there. As an average,
Copies.
we can make copies, but never, as an average, I'd say we need 10, but again, I don't know that we need to put a number on there. If, so. I think just a citizen wishing to present the board with documentation is asked to bring at least one copy for everyone present is the safest language for us.
Not every, excuse me, all,
Well, it needs to be for all the board members as well as all the public.
Make a copy for every person in the audience?
That's what's required.
I don't think that's what's required. I think what's required is that you have one hard copy for the members
For
of the public.
Oh,
Yes.
I misunderstood. Thank you.
okay. You all right, okay with that? I guess we'll continue with that then, at least one copy.
So does that mean,
So.
does that mean
should I
8 copies then total? Or 1,
It's up
2,
to
3,
us.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8?
I've got, let's see, I said 7 for each member of the board, that's 5. For the board secretary, that's 6. And for members of the public present,
Oh, okay.
that's 7. That's how I counted it, but these are your bylaws.
Yeah.
And
I
didn't you
would-
just say you don't want a number? Or-
Well, the reason I was uncomfortable with defining the number was because I thought there needed to be a copy for every member of the public present. That being the case, if we can just count one copy there, I still think our attorney as well as administrator should have a copy, and auditor and secretary. I mean, it's, so if we are going to define a number, I think we should.
10.
I don't know.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
yes, Commissioner.
And if we define number of copies and they don't have it, are we going to say you don't get to talk? I don't think we should put a number in. It should just say there should be a copy available for the board, and we can make copies. We have enough printers in this building.
We do.
I agree with that. I think that just keeps it simple and it's on us.
And we've also, I'm adding a sentence that says it's preferred that you give them ahead of time. So hopefully this is the exception that somebody brings copies, right?
Commissioner
I-
Mills?
You know, I hear what you're saying there, and I'm just trying to think about it. This has not been the exception. We are regularly given copies of things, and to keep the flow of the meeting going, I think it's important to have adequate copies versus running out and making copies for, I don't know. So if we can have guidelines, I don't think, is there a must? It's just asked.
Say ask or prefer.
Yeah. For the flow of the meeting, but, I mean, we can certainly accommodate that, but to keep the ball rolling here. Mr. Chair.
Could we, go ahead.
I'm just considering people that have never come to public comment and they're already nervous being here and they don't know what the rules are, and I'm 99% sure they're not going to read this policy before they come in to talk to us.
Yeah, you're right. Good.
So could we just state prefer in regards to copies?
Right now it says are asked to, it's preferred that a citizen.
That way, I think we cover both.
Is this the language that you're asking for? It is preferred that a citizen wishing to present the board with documentation brings at least one copy for members of the public present at the meeting, and also copies for the board without defining numbers. Or should, I have the word ideally in there. I don't know if that's what belongs there, but also copies for members of the board. Board secretary, administrator, attorney, auditor. You want me to include all of those terms in there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Commissioner Story?
Thank you, Chair. I just think it's important to remind the folks in the beginning of the meetings too, that this is what we adopt, and repetition will work, and they will, eventually understand that was part of our
So you're
bylaws.
asking, did I
Yeah.
put that in the beginning of my
It's a thought.
comment? If you have written comments, okay.
Yeah.
First it.
As long as you have that out, Myron, you can scratch the part that says we're allowed to talk to citizens.
Yeah, I caught that today, thank you.
Can I ask for your comment on the bracketed language, the last paragraph that's displayed here? My intention is not to draw attention to that official record part, because as we heard in the presentation recently, any document that's received by the board is a part of the record. But this procedure of the board chair or whoever the letter was addressed to is noted on the record. It says, when a citizen requests that a letter become part of the official record of a board meeting, the commissioner to whom the letter was addressed or the chair will note receipt of the letter, including the writer's name, the topic of the letter, and the request that it be made part of the official record during the board meeting. Is this a procedure you would like to include? I can't remember whose bylaws this came from.
Commissioner Mills?
I think we should just strike that, all the bracketed. It's redundant, unnecessary.
I agree. Anyone else want to comment on that? Okay, let's strike that.
And then the final sentence is kind of to save us when there's nobody, when somebody hasn't brought the copies. It says, it'll be copied after it's presented and a copy made available for those present at the meeting. I didn't put this up here, did I? Nope. Never mind. I'll make changes to this language as we've talked about and put it in the board packet for the next meeting. You can take a look at it. All right, this is the final
I'm sorry,
slide.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me.
Just one comment on that last part you mentioned about making copies if the insufficient number. I think we can just say, can be copied. Or what were you suggesting there? I didn't catch the last.
Yes, that it can, well, I want to say it will be
Okay.
copied if there are
Okay.
insufficient
Okay.
copies provided. I think it's wise to put that right in our bylaws so we don't forget about that requirement. And I didn't put it on the slide because it's one of those that I thought, this probably isn't controversial. Okay. Final slide is just the role of the presiding officer. Other rules of procedure in section 5, which we'll address at another meeting, better define what the presiding officer, the chair, the other members of the board, how they operate during meetings. But this is kind of a summary that the role of the presiding officer. If you have the original draft or what was included in the board packet, more than this paragraph are, but I just highlighted the language, and any member wishing to speak must first be recognized by the chair.
Commissioner Duker?
What if the chair and vice chair aren't present?
That is addressed in section 5, I think.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's,
Or is it up there?
they would elect or designate, as long as it's a quorum, they designate a chair.
Who would designate the chair?
The commissioners that are meeting. Okay. So that would go under L.
That's all I have for today.
Okay. Thank you for all your work, and everyone.
Sorry, I keep.
Work, this is work. Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I, just slow processing here, our discussion. As far as Commissioner Dukirk's concerns regarding the absence of chair and vice chair, I think it would make a lot more sense to put it in this section than later on, considering this is called up, that,
Sure.
you know, it's addressed here otherwise. And I didn't, I thought I read it somewhere else, but,
So your suggestion would be to put it in this section
yes, please.
instead of wherever else? I believe it is somewhere else. 'cause
Yeah, I have seen
just
it, yeah.
read
Yes, I'd read it someplace, so that
Made
would
together.
clarify that better, I think. We all agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
To insert that language at the, okay.
an L. You
Thanks
want it
again.
in L, right?
I think that'd be most appropriate myself. But-
Thank you again, Attorney Hicken, for all of the work you've put into this, and as well as the board members. I think we're definitely giving it due diligence.
One tooth at a time.
Yeah, scrutinized word by word, which is
Yeah.
the right thing to do. And it's labor intensive as far as our thinking. That's good. Okay, so we'll move on then to our administrator for.
Mr. Chair, sorry.
Excuse me.
Did, in the sake of time, we decided not to go to 5B? Is that, just
That was
because it
the
wasn't on the
understanding.
agenda? And
You're right.
yeah, okay.
We'll address that at the next meeting
Okay.
then too.
Thank
But
you.
I think it's there, and then there was a couple others that you were going to,
That I'll bring back.
that you'll bring back in the next board packet. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, Administrator Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Before I talk about the chairs, I would like to, if I could, just address a couple of questions that were brought up by Arvis Thompson in her public comments. And I totally get this business of she doesn't maybe understand a term, or that she would like to understand something better so she could comment on it prior to a meeting and, you know, before it's voted on. And I would just say to Ms. Thompson, and as well as anyone else here, at least while I'm in this position, I have an open door policy, and I'm always happy to answer questions about what's on the agenda and try to clarify terminology or whatever is there. So, and people can come to their own commissioners as well, I think, and express concerns or ask questions, but if they want, they can always give me a call, or I'm pretty much around most times, so I just wanted to be clear about that. There were two other comments as well about an extensive punch list at the Hovland garage, and that's actually not accurate. That punch list is down to like one item now, and that item is hooking up a pressure washer, and that's just simply scheduling for the people that are there. So that building is actually in very good shape. And there was also a question about the Viking building, and so that's kind of interesting because that's a process question. We have committees all the time that are trying to look at options for issues that that we have, and one of the issues that we have is you know, some of our spaces, our office spaces, are overcrowded, and so the building committee was looking at what might be some other options besides building a new building, and as we all know, there's limited commercial space available for that sort of thing in town. So, you know, it was something that the committee wanted to explore, to see what options were out there, to see if that was a good alternative or a good way, a more economical way to address some of our space needs than building a new building. As it turns out, that building was not a good use of space, and the committee has kind of moved on from that. But I just want people to understand that just because we talk about something, we're not making a decision to do it. Sometimes we're talking about it to rule it out or to just understand that there may be other options than what we've considered before. And I think it's a good idea for us to always be open to different ideas. Commissioner Dukert?
What Arvis's concern was when a presenter discusses an item and she has a question during or after the presentation, not prior to the presentation, because in our history, the public was able to participate in discussions if they were present. So I think that's where she was at, is where does that fall in? And our response has always been, when you elect the person to represent you, then that's our job to ask those questions and answer them, and hopefully we ask the questions that she has.
So it's a combination. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify some of those things. So the moving on to the proposal about the chairs. This came out of the building committee. It's something that's come up before. The proposal not only covers the chairs in this room, but it covers the chairs in the ITV room as well. And in that room, I kind of affectionately call it the chair hospice room, where chairs go to die. So whenever somebody in an office has a chair that doesn't work anymore and they don't know what to do with it, they order a new chair and it goes into that room. And so when anybody that's been in a meeting in that room, which is certainly all of us, you go and you sit down, and if you happen to get the lowrider chair, you sit down and all of a sudden your chin is on the table, and there's a lot of that goes on in that room. So this proposal included 25 chairs for that room as well, to replace those really, truly broken chairs. And I think the thought of the building committee, and certainly this is up to you, to how you want to think about that, was to have chairs that matched, since these chairs were getting older, so that you had more options when you had a bigger meeting or whatever. But I think the point's also been made that these chairs are still serviceable. And these chairs that have been proposed are burgundy, so they could mix and match in here. So I think the board has some options of not replacing any chairs, replacing these chairs, replacing all of the chairs or some of the chairs. And I just wanted to propose that. So I did a little bit of quick math, didn't get out a calculator, but the cost of replacing the 25 chairs that are in that room is it's like $1,325. So as opposed to the $4,275 of replacing all of them. So I just wanted to throw that out as an option. This is, again, a recommendation from the building committee, and that they would like you to consider.
Commissioner Dukert?
So the 75 included 25 for over there. You do the
Yes.
same chairs in here.
Yes.
Okay. And then some of the public comment questions were the same questions I had, and I talked to Bobby because he's a member of the building committee, and so he answered a lot of the questions for me, and I had the same feeling of, let's not put them at the community center, because if they're not good enough here, they're not good enough there, and I don't ever want a citizen to come in here and get hurt in the chair, no matter how minor that is. We always want people to be comfortable, within reason.
Commissioner Storley?
Thank you, Chairman. So these chairs, where are you proposing these go?
Wherever the other hospice chairs go.
So we could look them over and pick out the best for in there?
No,
Okay.
what I'm proposing is these chairs, there really are issues with them, as well as all the chairs in that room.
Okay.
And they probably just are not really
Okay.
what we need to have people sitting in anymore, because somebody is,
Something there. Okay.
they're not ergonomic, they're maybe even dangerous at some point. So what I'm suggesting is, you can make a choice. These are chairs that you sit in. There's these chairs to be replaced, which is the first item on
Right.
there. And then I would also, I guess I would recommend that we at least replace the chairs in the ITV room as well, a portion of those. And that chairs that really are no longer serviceable, that we just, we throw them away.
And how many would go into the IT room would you need?
I think
the
we said
stackable.
25.
25. At about $1,300?
1325, but you can all check my math if you want.
Okay. Well, I guess personally, I'd be in favor of, yes, these chairs, replace the ones in there, leave everything here. And we could interchange, we could still interchange
Yes,
between what we
absolutely.
have.
Commissioner DeShaw.
Yeah, these chairs in here are probably 10 years old or better.
They're 23 years old.
23 years old. Huh? They're 23 years old. If you take the $4,200 with a 10-year lifespan, that's $35 a month for chairs.
Yep.
A lot bigger purchases go through the county board than that, and, you know, we had a pretty good group at the building committee, and I was in support for it at the building committee, and I'm in support for it today, so.
Commissioner DeKirk.
And just when Rena addressed the cemetery of chairs, I'm on the safety committee, and oftentimes it's our insurer that comes in and meets with the staff to find out why they're in pain at work, and the chairs fail and go there. So, I mean, this saves on employee productivity and other things, and I know that it can be disputed about whether or not these chairs are good enough to continue to use them or not. And part of why I called Bobby to talk to him specifically about the building committee is Bobby is the one who often says, no, we don't need to spend that money. No, that's ridiculous. No, in Grand Portage, we have chairs that are 50 years old and they work just fine. And so for me to have it come from Bobby, who's the most conservative person that we have, I was literally shocked when I was talking to him, because I was like, okay, if you say so. So I'm comfortable with all 75, because he also explained where the funding for this comes from. So I think that that should be addressed also, so the public knows that we're not.
It was actually budgeted for in the this year's building fund. So
Yeah.
it was money that was already budgeted from last year.
Which is really important.
I'll call on myself, but I would like to support what Commissioner DeShaw said, that we talked about this, and I think the committee process is a good process, and we should seriously not adopt everything that comes from committee, but I found in my experience that if you vet things real well at a committee level and they come forward, that we should pay real close attention to that and have good reasons to, especially if the cost is high. But I don't see that as an insurmountable cost, and we have it budgeted already, so I guess I would support that we do that purchase. But with that, Commissioner DeKirk.
I will make the motion to purchase 9 Martha Washington chairs and 75 Comfort Burgundy stackable.
Do we have a second to that?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Story.
Yes. Well, the one benefit would be that they're interchangeable, but sometimes we get a room full here. We can't bring the hospice chairs back in here, so that we'd be able to have people more comfortable in here when we have larger meetings like truth and taxation and so forth. So, yes.
Commissioner
I
DeKirk?
agree with Ginny. If we have the space and availability, the best chairs from here, if we could store them for larger meetings, that would be good.
Okay, any, Commissioner Mills?
I was curious if the building committee had talked to Diane about them going to the community center, and if that's a need or if there's space. I know space and storage space there is an issue. Even just storing the current metal chairs is kind of tight up there.
Administrator Rogers?
Commissioner Mills, I think what was discussed was that if, that there might be other options for the chairs. They could be sold on auction. They could be perhaps used in another building for, like the community center. No, we hadn't checked that out, but that we would, if there were chairs that were still serviceable. Although I'm hearing a recommendation that perhaps we could store the best ones for meetings, larger meetings, and bring them up. So.
Commissioner Mills?
And so, am I I'm sorry to really get into the weeds here, but
Go for it.
Are these Comfort Burgundy fabric stackable steel side recaps incompatible with our current chairs as far as stacking is concerned?
They're not the same chair as 23 years ago.
Sure.
So they probably would not stack the same way.
Yep.
They're going to be similar, I think, in quality and because they're steel chairs and fabric seats. And they're a similar shape, but you can see in the picture they're not exactly the same shape. So they would, could mix and match with these chairs, I think, looks-wise or, style-wise, but I don't think they would be stackable with these chairs.
Okay.
But I don't know that for sure, but when I look at the picture, that's what I see.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, my instinct would be to agree with Commissioner Storley as far as replacing and keeping these, but I do greatly value our committees and the work they do, and I put a lot of trust in them, and don't need to pick apart all that work. So I had concerns about the optics of this, but I think that there's good reasons for it. So.
Thank you. So we're ready, I think, for a vote. All those in favor of the purchase of these chairs as submitted, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It passes. Okay. Employee concerns, commissioners' concerns. Any reports from individual commissioners? Commissioner Dukirk?
We had our Pigeon River Steering Committee meeting this last week, and Homeland Security was up, and it was interesting during the conversation. Homeland Security spends a lot of time on training and response and different scenarios, and they said in recent years, the training and response and education outreach that they're doing is more on a civil level. It used to be wildfires, fires, natural disasters, floods, storms, and now it's on citizen participation and how citizens react to events, and blocking off the trains in Canada is a good definition of that, where the citizens are blocking trains from coming in and out. And so now they're moving some of their education and training more to how do we have more civil meetings and engagement, because that is a big concern for safety. And I just want to touch on, since I was on the meeting for the Trails Project Grant, I just wanted to note for the record that the group also involved in that committee that went to all of the meetings and participated very heavily in that is the Tread Lightly Off-Road Group, and the off-road designation will 100% be part of that marking and mapping.
Anything else from other commissioners before? Commissioner Staley?
Yes. Well, if you remember back to our AMC in St. Cloud, back in December, we decided to bring a gift basket. You saw all the baskets lined up behind the glass, and I put together a basket, and the lady who received the basket sent a note. Dear friends, I appreciated the door prize I won at AMC convention in December of 19. The assortment of items provided an excellent illustration of all the many resources in your county. And I put that basket together, Businesses were more than happy to put in a piece of candy, a bottle of wine, information from the tourist center, great gifts, you name it, and so she received a nice basket.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was nice from her.
Okay. Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the city has hired a new library director. It's Amanda St. John, and she was the assistant library director previously, so just wanted to make everyone aware of that. And now we'll be looking for an assistant library director. I won't be a part of that.
Okay.
However, and
Okay.
I think that,
Okay,
aside
so,
from our administrative search, that checks off all of the director
Yeah, you've been
positions
quite-
that I've been involved with.
you have been more than your share. Thank you. Just meetings to note, we'll be going to, most of us will be going to the legislative conference today through Thursday. And there'll be a quorum of commissioners there. For the NACO Legislative Conference, there's an update on that. We were going to have Attorney Hicken and myself attend some sessions with an undersecretary of the Department of Agriculture and Representative Stauber's office, and that has been postponed. It was found out that it was very difficult to schedule some meetings, especially with someone of authority in the United States Department of Agriculture. And so I know that St. Louis County Commissioners and myself, I agreed with that we should not go unless we're meeting with preferably the Deputy Secretary Sensky, who we met with before, because I think when we do something that's significant with that kind of cost, we should be assured that it's going to be with someone of authority and decision-making, even though we could have met with some staff. So hopefully there will be something worked out with that. The process going forward is going to work with a lobby group that Lake County and I think St. Louis County is working with to really try to schedule this, to firm it up a little bit more, because it just got to be difficult with the approach that we had. And I want to really commend Board Chair Svei from Lake County, who really tried to get this to work out, and he will be meeting with, I think, some of Stauber's staff and Representative Stauber's staff, as well as others, to continue bringing this reappraisal forward. So it's not a done issue, and hopefully we'll be able to go when we can have more of a substantive kind of influence in the process. Any questions on that? Okay, well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay? Meeting adjourned.
Your hat.